Roguelikes are some of my favorite games. There's just something about getting better and better at a game until you're finally able to beat it. But very quickly, let's take a step back and define what a roguelike even is. The signature characteristics of roguelikes are randomly generated levels and permadeath, which means that once you die, you lose everything, all of your progress. Which for this data pack, I tried to bring over to Minecraft. Or at least that was the initial plan. You see, as weird as this sounds, in a way Minecraft already has a game mode in the base game that turns it into a roguelike. That mode is hardcore. Think about it, the world is randomly generated, if you die you lose all of your progress, and there are even dungeons you have to go through to get to the final boss. And technically if you die and start a new world, that could be considered a new run. So this is awkward, that was the whole premise of the video. If only there was a subgenre of roguelikes that would be much more interesting to turn into a data pack. Roguelites are very similar to roguelikes, it's literally a one-letter difference. Anyways, remember what I said about permadeath? Let's just ignore that. That's pretty much what roguelites are. They keep most of the elements of roguelikes while adding some level of progression. Now that is a much more interesting premise for a data pack. Too interesting in fact. Which means that I got kind of carried away. Now there's this giant tunnel full of upgrades, abilities, classes, a custom final boss, a difficulty multiplier, multiplayer support, custom advancements. Let me just walk you through the data pack in a way that makes much more sense than this. So here we are in game. Right now we're located in the tutorial, where there's a whole bunch of lecterns around us which explain literally everything about the data pack. But I think it would be more interesting to just play the data pack and explain things as we go along. First of all, let's talk about the hub. Now, the tutorial is actually part of the hub, so let's step through this portal and take a look at the rest of the hub. And as you can see, there's a whole lot of stuff for us to look at. First of all, in this giant tunnel we have the upgrades. Upgrades can be bought as permanent buffs. So for example, over here I can increase my attack damage at the cost of 4 skill points. Now, we don't actually have any skill points yet, we'll talk about those later. But as you can see, there's quite a few upgrades. Over here we have abilities, which are active spells. For example, we have Pulse Sphere, which deals damage in a circle around you. Or how about Area Mine, which mines out a large area around you. There's a lot of really useful abilities here for a lot of different scenarios. That being said, they are quite expensive, so they are more so a thing for the mid-game. And it also presents you with an interesting choice. Because in our hotbar you can see these 3 ability items. These are used to actually equip these abilities. Now there is a way to have a 4th ability item, and we'll talk about that in a second, but under normal circumstances you can only equip 3 of these 10 abilities. But what about that 4th ability I mentioned a second ago? Well, let's talk about classes. Right now there's 4 classes in this data pack, and you can only be in one class at a time. We have the tank, which has an extra row of hearts, the mage, which has increased mana regeneration, the healer, which starts with healing potions, and of course the glass cannon, which has increased damage but no armor. Outside of that, each class also has a class ability. Now that being said, we can't actually afford anything. When we open the tab menu, you can see that we have a 0 next to our name. This represents the amount of skill points we have, which can only be earned during a run. So let's begin. So here we are. There's a few things to note here. First of all, you might notice that we only have 5 hearts. You see, these upgrades that you can unlock are quite strong, and if I didn't do anything about that, this would just be completely unbalanced. So I did a few things to make this a lot more challenging. One of them is to reduce your max health at the start. More importantly though, there's something very wrong here. As you can see, we can't craft a wooden pickaxe. Now, this normally wouldn't be a problem, after all, we already have a stone pickaxe, and this one's unbreakable. But that's all we get. Every single tool, sword and armor recipe is completely disabled. Another thing to make this more difficult. And if you really want better tools, you'll have to buy the corresponding upgrade. Now that being said, this is technically still beatable. And I mean, it's not the worst weapon, maybe the second worst. Now there are 2 more things to make this more difficult. One of them is kind of irrelevant for now, but the other one is right there, right above my head. The difficulty level. Basically, the entire time you're playing, this slider will slightly go up. And if that bar completely fills up, the game will get slightly harder. So for example, zombies and skeletons, they will start spawning with leather armor. And this applies to a lot of mobs. And once we hit difficulty level 11, every time that bar fully fills up, we will lose a heart for the rest of the run. So basically we should go a bit faster. Oh, it's about to happen. The difficulty level has increased to 2. So now every mob that can spawn with armor will have leather armor. Sounds tame enough, but trust me, this will get out of control pretty quickly. Now, all of this being said, there is one saving grace. As you might have guessed, I'm talking about skill points. Oh, this is quite the awkward angle. Can I get it closer? Ignoring the fact that the whole screen is me now, let's talk about skill points. Skill points can be acquired in 2 ways. The first one is something that actually already happened. You gained 1 skill point for completing a major advancement. You now have 1 skill point in total. I didn't mention it when it happened, but this was when I killed the Iron Golem. There are a select few advancements that grant you skill points in this data pack, but that's more so just a slight boost. That's not your main way of getting them. Instead, there's 3 new recipes to make these skill points. Now, the last 2 recipes both have materials that require you to have an iron pickaxe. Technically, you can also get gold from the nether, but I'm not gonna go there yet. So for now, I'm gonna go with the first recipe. This is why we gathered so much copper. But what's this material in the middle of the crafting recipe? That material is a skill pearl. These are quite valuable resources that you can only get by leveling up. So right now we're level 6, which means that we have 6 skill pearls. And these on the other hand can be used to craft skill points. You now have 2 in total. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but there's also custom advancements. Some of these are actually quite good. I definitely recommend going for some of these. Now let's get back to skill points, because now we actually have a way of getting them. Oh, yeah, look at that. This zombie now spawns in golden armor. This is thanks to the difficulty level. Oh, and there's one last thing about skill pearls. As I mentioned, the main purpose of skill points is to buy upgrades in the hub. But once you start a new run, all of your unspent skill points will be gone. Which means that you can't really hoard a lot of skill points, you have to spend them right away. So something like regeneration, which costs 15 skill points, is actually pretty tough to get. Oh, there's a lava pool. I mean, I said I wasn't gonna go to the nether, but like, I could definitely get some gold. Let's get some gold from the nether and make some better skill points. Also, you get quite a few skill points for entering the nether. That being said, definitely don't go to the nether on your first run. You will die. I mean, let's be real, I got really lucky with this warp forest. Oh. Difficulty level 4 I think means that everything now has iron equipment. So things are escalating quite quickly. That being said, let's make these 4 skill points. 11 in total, that's actually a pretty good first run. Yeah, you know, maybe I don't want to fight these guys. Look at them in that diamond armor. Okay, now take a guess what difficulty level 6 does. Now the goal of this data pack is still to kill the Ender Dragon. So outside of the fact that the game loop is completely different, the overall progression is still the same. So right now I'm trying to get blaze rods to get to the stronghold. Come on, let me in, let me in, let me in. Give me the achievement. Hey, there we go. Another 5 skill points. Oh. Diamond wither skeletons. I don't see how I'm gonna survive this, to be honest. They have netherite armor now. I don't see the problem with this situation at all, if I'm being honest. You know, I'd say we're doing pretty well, actually. And that was the first run. Honestly, more than anything, I'm surprised that we lasted that long at the fortress. Well, let's hit the respawn button, and we were defeated. But that was just our first run. Now we got a whole bunch of skill points to spend. So now for the big question, what do we spend these skill points on? And the answer is that I'm not gonna go the optimal route. I think figuring out the most efficient way to spend skill points is a lot of the fun in this data pack. And so if I showed you what I think is the best way of spending skill points, I think that would take away a lot of the fun. So instead, let's do something less than optimal. Let's buy 1 ability and 1 class. As for abilities, the Arrow Shockwave is actually really cheap. So I think I'm gonna upgrade this one quite a bit. And once you bought a skill, you just have to click it with your ability item to bind it to that item. Now this ability item, this rectangle, will show up in your inventory when you start a run. And then by simply using that item, you can cast that ability. As for classes, let's go for Healer. It's more so well suited for multiplayer, but it's still decent in single player. As for the rest of the 9 skill points, I don't know, food maybe, a bucket, better tools maybe, and defense. So real quick, I'm gonna show off those new abilities. Oh, this is quite the spawn, isn't it? Luckily, there's a handy command for times like these. And believe it or not, but this was not planned. So in chat, let's type trigger restart run. Once every player has used this, every player will just die, causing the run to reset. Very simple quality of life change. Now let's hope for a better spawn. Right away, there's a few key differences. At the top below the difficulty level, you will now see a mana bar. This is a new stat that's solely used for abilities. Speaking of, we now got the Arrow Shockwave ability in our inventory as well as the Revitalize ability. Arrow Shockwave being the one we bought in the shop, and Revitalize is the class ability of the healer class. So as you can see, we're missing quite a bit of health now, but if we use the Revitalize ability, we can regenerate this. And this heal effect is applied to every single player. Again, that's what makes it so great in multiplayer. And as you can see on the mana bar, the mana we have now slowly regenerates. Now, as I said, there's not just class abilities. There's also normal abilities, which can be used the exact same way. And no, there's absolutely no cooldown on these abilities. You can spam these as much as you want. That being said, Arrow Shockwave is the cheapest ability of them all, so you can't really spam most of them. That being said, this ability is quite strong in the early game. But is it the strongest? I don't know, that's for you to find out. And I believe with that, that's all the explaining done. You now know almost everything about this data pack. There's a few more changes, but those are much more endgame, which means that we need a much stronger run than this. So I'm gonna give myself some skill points and we'll take a look at an example for an endgame run. As you can see, we're quite strong now. Alright then, let's go. Now as you can see, we have quite a bit of health. Also fully enchanted netherite armor, a netherite sword, a pretty strong bow. Yeah, the upper limit of how strong you can get is quite high. But oh, trust me, it's more than necessary. You'll see in a second. For now, let's just make this portal. A nether fortress right next to a bastion, that's pretty rare. Well, let's get in. Now I'm gonna be brutally honest, I don't think these blazes stand a chance. Okay, before we do anything else, let's talk about what just happened. When we picked up the blaze rod, a stronghold generated at those coordinates. Now these coordinates might seem absurd, that's actually just the spawn point for this run. And if we dig straight down there, we should now find a stronghold. So don't even bother using Eyes of Ender the way you normally would. Those will just lead you to a stronghold that's several million blocks away. Okay, but what if something like this happens? You logged out of the world and now your entire chat is gone. Well, in that case, you can simply type /trigger stronghold location, and it will just tell you where the stronghold is. Pretty handy command. Now the final step is to just take down the Ender Dragon. Is that it? Oh, that's it. That's it. Alright, here we are. Now some of you might think that the Ender Dragon will be a complete pushover. After all, we're insanely powerful right now. But those of you who see my last video will probably know where this is going. Here we are in the end. And right now everything might seem the same. Oh, let me tell you, things are very different. Oh, it already begins. Yep, this is not the normal Ender Dragon. This is a much more powerful version of it. As you can see, oh my goodness, that's so loud. This is a custom Ender Dragon boss fight I made for my last video. And when I worked on this data pack on Roguecraft, I knew that this fight would be perfect for it. Okay, these Endermen are quite annoying, let's use Explosion. There we go. Okay, here's phase 2. The Ender Dragon now has a different pool of attacks, as well as caged end crystals. Also there's shulkers everywhere. Is that the ball of death? Oh, it sure is. If you see this thing, run. Oh, there's another one, there's another one. Go down, go down. Oh no, there's a ball of death. Use invulnerable shield. This makes us immortal for 10 seconds. Alright, that was phase 2. Phase 3 has you fight off against a few waves of enemies. Luckily, we have Arrow Shockwave, which completely trivializes this. Oh, look at that damage. This is a very clean way to deal with these waves. That being said, the fourth wave is a bit more terrifying. I think separating them is the best strategy here, and then you just melee them, because they actually have decreased attack. I mean, as you can see, we're not taking any damage right now. That being said, we do have a wither to deal with now. Oh, there you are! How did you even get in here? That's probably the most confusing part. Well then, final phase of the Ender Dragon. It's now gonna use all of its attacks much more often, which should result in absolute chaos soon. Oh, and it can also spawn end crystals in the sky. And it's just gonna get faster and faster. Come on, dragon! There we go! That was a clean hit! Hello, Ender Dragon! How's it going? Oh my god! That dealt so much damage! What? We almost just killed the Ender Dragon! I think we skipped like 2 phases. Alright then, I think that does it. Goodbye! And that's the Ender Dragon down. Now, as for what happens after you defeat the Ender Dragon, once again, I'm gonna leave that for you to find out. After all, I need to give you all a reason to play this data pack, and believe me, this data pack is a ton of fun. At this point, I've put over 3 months of work into this, and I think it's safe to say that this is the best data pack I've ever made. And hey, if you know some other people who'd like to play this, I highly encourage you to play this in multiplayer. I tried it with some other people while testing, and we had a blast. Now, with all of this being said, expect to see a few more videos on this data pack, because I'm not done with this yet. But for the time being, that's all. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.